Hulk Hogan's daughter rejects $30 million fortune after shocking will reveal. Hulk Hogan's daughter says no to $30 million. The wrestling world is stunned as Brooke Hogan walks away from her father's massive fortune after the shocking details of Hulk Hogan's final will are revealed. In this exclusive video, we dive deep into the emotional and dramatic fallout surrounding the Hulkster's last will and testament. Why did Brooke turn down a life-changing inheritance? What secrets does the will expose? And how does the Hogan family react to this unexpected twist? Expect shocking revelations, emotional tension, and a story that'll leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about wrestling's most iconic family. Under the bright lights of a Florida courtroom, silence hung heavy in the air. The media circus had arrived, cameras lined outside, reporters jostling for a view of what was being called the most shocking legal proceeding in professional wrestling history. But inside, where the glare of flashbulbs couldn't reach, a far more intimate and devastating story was unfolding. Brooke Hogan, daughter of the legendary Hulk Hogan, stood before a judge and quietly uttered the words that stunned not only the Hogan family, but the entire wrestling world: "I decline the inheritance." $30 million, gone in an instant, turned away not out of greed, but out of something deeper. Pain. Principle. Possibly both. Just days earlier, the world had learned that Hulk Hogan, real name Terry Bollea, had passed away. The wrestling icon who once told millions to train, say their prayers, and believe in themselves, had succumbed to cardiac arrest in his Clearwater Beach home at age 71. The WWE Hall of Famer had battled health issues for years, but few expected his end to come so suddenly. And even fewer anticipated the legal firestorm that would erupt when the contents of his final will were revealed. It began with a sealed envelope, delivered to Brooke's attorney under strict instruction. Inside was the last will and testament of the man who had once body-slammed giants and ruled the golden age of wrestling. The will, dated just 4 months before his death, was shocking not for what it offered, but for what it revealed. There were the standard declarations, the division of properties, bank accounts, and memorabilia. But tucked inside the appendix, in a section simply labeled Addendum A, was a letter. Handwritten by Hulk Hogan himself. Brooke sat in silence as her attorney read it aloud. In her father's unmistakable scrawl were words not of love or nostalgia, but of remorse. "Brooke, if you're reading this, I hope you understand. I never stopped loving you. But I had to be honest in my final moments. I made mistakes. I chose fame over family. I hurt people I cared about. And I left wounds that money can't fix." It was raw, personal, and brutally honest. Brooke's eyes welled with tears. She had always known there were demons lurking in her father's past, but hearing him acknowledge them was like being hit with a steel chair to the heart. For years, fans saw the Hulkster as the embodiment of charisma and strength. But behind the scenes, his personal life had crumbled. His divorce from Linda Hogan was tabloid fodder for years. Allegations of infidelity, financial mismanagement, and estrangement from his children stained his public image. Brooke, once the apple of his eye and a star in her own right thanks to their reality show Hogan Knows Best, had gradually pulled away from the spotlight, and from him. The will detailed his financial empire: over $50 million in assets, real estate in Florida and California, stakes in multiple media ventures, and royalties from decades of wrestling merchandise. $30 million was earmarked for Brooke. It could have set her up for life. But then came the second envelope. Confidential. Addressed only to her. Inside was a handwritten letter. Unlike the legalistic tone of the will, this was emotional, unfiltered. Hogan confessed to secrets he had buried for decades, fractures in the family no one had ever publicly acknowledged. He spoke of a rift with Brooke that began years ago when she questioned his role in a personal controversy that nearly derailed the family. He admitted to keeping truths from her. And most damning of all, he hinted at a private incident, never fully explained, that led Brooke to walk away from their relationship for nearly a decade. The letter didn't contain details, but it didn't need to. For Brooke, it was a confirmation of everything she had suspected, and everything she had hoped wasn't true. In that moment, money didn't matter. The empire he had built, the legacy fans adored, it all felt like a hollow monument to a relationship that had cracked beyond repair. She didn't want the money. She wanted the truth. She wanted the father who used to tuck her in before matches, not the one who stood silent during the darkest chapter of her life. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. The judge, accustomed to estate disputes and financial wrangling, paused in stunned silence. Brooke's attorney confirmed her decision. She was declining the inheritance, formally and irrevocably. A media frenzy erupted. News outlets scrambled for statements. Was this a PR stunt? A symbolic protest? Or something far more personal? In an exclusive interview with a close family friend, who spoke anonymously to protect Brooke's privacy, it was revealed that Brooke had made the decision weeks before the court date. Upon first reading the will and accompanying letter, she reportedly fell into what was described as a grief spiral, locking herself in her Nashville apartment and refusing to speak to anyone for 3 days. When she emerged, she told her closest confidant, "I can't take blood money. I can't take hush money. If he really loved me, he would have come clean while he was alive, not from the grave." The statement was searing. And it sent shockwaves through the Hogan family. Nick Hogan, her brother, expressed confusion and heartbreak. "We all lost our father," he said in a brief social media post, "but we shouldn't lose each other too." Family insiders say Nick had encouraged Brooke to accept the inheritance and use it for good, start a foundation, honor their father's wrestling legacy, even donate it. But Brooke stood firm. For her, it wasn't about the money. It was about meaning. About integrity. About not letting her father's final act define her own path. The wrestling world, too, was stunned. Fellow WWE legends like Ric Flair and Jimmy Hart declined to comment, citing the sensitivity of the matter. But one Hall of Famer, speaking on condition of anonymity, said, "This changes everything we thought we knew about Hulk. He was larger than life, but maybe we never saw the whole picture." In the weeks that followed, questions swirled. What was the incident Hogan referenced? Why did Brooke feel so betrayed? And what did this mean for the future of the Hogan family legacy? Some pointed to court records sealed over a decade ago, related to a civil dispute involving Hogan and a close associate. Others hinted at long-rumored tensions between Brooke and her father during her brief music career, rumors that he had tried to control her creative direction, her image, and even her relationships. Brooke, for her part, remained largely silent. No press conferences. No interviews. Just a brief statement issued through her lawyer, "I have chosen to step away from the inheritance offered in my father's will. My decision is personal, final, and made with the deepest respect for myself and my future." Still, the questions lingered. Had Hulk Hogan tried, in the final months of his life, to make amends in the only way he knew how, through financial provision? Or had he known his sins were too great for forgiveness, and hoped to buy peace from beyond the grave? Legal experts weighed in. Estate attorney Linda Cartwright, speaking on a cable news panel, explained that Brooke's rejection of the inheritance could not be reversed. "This is not a publicity stunt," she said. "This is a legal move that permanently renounces her claim. It's incredibly rare, and it signals deep emotional trauma or a powerful personal principle. Likely both." And then came the most shocking twist of all, an amendment to the will that named a secondary beneficiary in the event Brooke declined. That name? A woman in her late 30s known only as Vanessa in legal filings. Speculation exploded. Was this another family member? An undisclosed child? A confidant? In the final paragraph of the will's addendum, Hogan had written, "If Brooke cannot accept this gift, I ask that it be given to someone who stood by me in the shadows when my own blood could not." The ambiguity of the statement sent tabloids into overdrive. One tabloid claimed Vanessa was a longtime personal assistant. Another suggested she was a former romantic partner. Yet no one could confirm her true identity. What became clear was that Hulk Hogan, the man whose life played out on magazine covers and pay-per-view specials, had spent his final days orchestrating a narrative he could no longer control. And his daughter, in rejecting his fortune, had reclaimed a power she hadn't held in years, the power to define her own story. Brooke's decision may have shocked the world, but those closest to her say it was inevitable. A source close to her Nashville circle said she had often spoken about feeling like a character in her father's mythology, an accessory to Hulkamania rather than a person in her own right. She didn't want to be remembered as the daughter who got the check. She wanted to be remembered as the daughter who found her own peace. As the estate moves forward with redistribution of assets, and as speculation continues to swirl about the woman named Vanessa, one thing remains certain: Hulk Hogan's legacy has been forever changed. Not by his championships. Not by his fame. But by a daughter's decision to walk away from it all. In the weeks following Brooke Hogan's stunning refusal of her inheritance, the shockwaves continued to ripple through both the legal world and the wrestling universe. But nowhere was the tremor felt more than inside the walls of World Wrestling Entertainment headquarters. At Titan Tower in Stamford, Connecticut, executives huddled behind closed doors, trying to assess the damage to a legacy they had helped build. Hulk Hogan wasn't just another Hall of Famer. He was the cornerstone of the WWE empire, a symbol of the sport's explosive rise in the 1980s, and one of the few figures who transcended the squared circle. Now, that legacy stood cracked. Not by a scandal of the ring, but by a family revelation impossible to ignore. Privately, WWE officials debated whether to issue a formal statement. On one hand, Hogan had long been a controversial figure, his past marred by lawsuits, leaked recordings, and public backlash. But he had also been welcomed back into the fold, featured in tributes, merchandise, and special appearances. Would Brooke's rejection spark a reassessment of that forgiveness? Could the company continue to celebrate a man whose own daughter had so publicly distanced herself from his fortune and, implicitly, his legacy? Stephanie McMahon, according to backstage sources, was one of the first to weigh in. "We can't bury this," she reportedly said during an executive roundtable. "We built this brand on transparency and connection. Our fans deserve to know where we stand." Internally, a memo was circulated advising talent to avoid commenting publicly on the Hogan estate situation. But off the record, many couldn't contain their reactions. One current champion, speaking anonymously, described Brooke's move as powerful and heartbreaking, adding, "It takes guts to walk away from money that big, especially when it comes with your father's name on it." And what of Vanessa? The mysterious name left behind in Hogan's will began to dominate headlines. TMZ ran a feature titled "The Woman Who Replaced Brooke?" Others dubbed her the shadow beneficiary. Investigations unearthed little. No public record. No formal statement. Yet a breakthrough came when a photo surfaced of Hulk Hogan attending a private charity gala in Miami just 6 months before his passing. Standing beside him, barely recognized at first, was a brunette woman in her late 30s, dressed modestly, almost trying to disappear into the background. When the image was cross-referenced with past social media archives, a match was found. Vanessa Kellerman, a former backstage assistant for a Florida-based wrestling promotion where Hogan made frequent appearances during his semi-retirement. The discovery triggered a media frenzy. Who was Vanessa to Hulk Hogan? Why had she been named in a clause so emotionally loaded? Digging through court records and archived interviews, a clearer, but still incomplete, picture emerged. Vanessa had reportedly met Hogan in the early 2010s during a difficult period in his life, following the implosion of his reality show, the fallout of his divorce, and the exposure of his infamous tape scandal. She had worked behind the scenes as a coordinator, handling appearances and media logistics. Over time, sources say, she became a confidant. One former associate claimed that Vanessa was the only person who didn't need him to be Hulk Hogan. She just saw him as Terry. But if there was a deeper relationship, romantic or otherwise, neither party had ever confirmed it publicly. And now, Vanessa wasn't talking. Reached by phone at her modest apartment outside Tampa, she declined to comment. "I'm not comfortable saying anything at this time," she said simply, before hanging up. Her silence only added fuel to the speculation. But for Brooke Hogan, Vanessa's emergence wasn't the issue. It was what her presence represented, a chapter of her father's life that had been hidden, nurtured, and prioritized in his final days, while she, his daughter, had remained on the outside. Privately, friends say Brooke felt blindsided, not just by the inheritance decision, but by the idea that someone else had stepped into the emotional space once reserved for her. She wasn't angry at Vanessa, said one longtime friend. She was devastated that her father had someone else he considered family, someone he could open up to, while their own bond deteriorated. That bond, Brooke later admitted in therapy sessions disclosed through close sources, had been fractured beyond recognition after a series of confrontations in the late 2000s. While the public saw a loving father-daughter duo on reality TV, behind the scenes, tensions brewed. Brooke reportedly struggled with the pressure of being portrayed as the wholesome face of the Hogan brand, even as she tried to carve out her own career. She clashed with her father over creative choices, dating life, and what she described as being managed like a product. When the scandals hit, the leaked conversations, the lawsuits, Brooke distanced herself further. At one point, she moved across the country with no forwarding address. It took months before she even responded to Hogan's messages. Though they eventually reconnected for a few public appearances, sources say the relationship never fully healed. There were long stretches of silence, awkward birthday calls, and unspoken pain lingering beneath the surface. And now, in death, her father had chosen to write his final letter not with closure, but with confession. To some, that might have felt like a gesture of redemption. But for Brooke, it was too little, too late. If he had said those things to my face while he was alive, maybe we could have found a way back, she reportedly told a close confidant. But he waited until he had nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, public reaction continued to split down emotional lines. Some fans flooded social media with support for Brooke, hailing her as courageous and principled. Others accused her of disrespecting her father's legacy, claiming that declining the inheritance was a slap in the face to fans who had adored the Hogan family dynamic for decades. But amidst the noise, one voice emerged with unexpected gravity, that of Linda Hogan. In an interview with a popular daytime talk show, Linda broke her silence on the will and Brooke's decision. Dressed in subdued colors and with a noticeably solemn tone, she spoke candidly. I watched my daughter grow up in the spotlight, under a microscope none of us were prepared for. She's stronger than people realize. And I support her choice, fully. When asked about the contents of the will and the presence of Vanessa, Linda's expression stiffened. That's a chapter one wasn't a part of. I won't speak on it. But I will say this, Terry had a lot of regrets. He just didn't always know how to say them out loud. Her comments struck a chord with many who had followed the family saga for years. It painted a portrait not just of a daughter saying no to a fortune, but of an entire family processing grief, regret, and legacy in public. In the days that followed, Linda's interview went viral. Clips were shared across platforms, with fans commenting how rare it was to see such unfiltered emotion in a celebrity family. Meanwhile, WWE quietly removed Hulk Hogan's face from their front-page slideshow tributes. While still celebrated in their official Hall of Fame archive, his presence was noticeably less prominent in the company's digital ecosystem. Industry insiders debated whether this was a strategic distancing or merely a temporary PR measure. Either way, it didn't go unnoticed. In fan forums and Reddit threads, the shift sparked debate. Could Hulk Hogan's posthumous image survive this unexpected legacy twist? Perhaps the most poignant fallout, though, occurred far from the cameras. Brooke Hogan reportedly began visiting a small grief counseling center in Nashville. There, surrounded by those who had lost parents, she began the slow work of processing her father's dual identity, the icon worshipped by millions, and the complicated man who left her with both love and scars. In one session, recounted by a fellow attendee with permission, Brooke spoke of walking into a store and hearing Real American blaring from a television. Everyone looked up and smiled, she said, but I just froze. I didn't know whether to cry or salute. That moment, more than any court document or inheritance clause, captured the complexity of her grief. As the weeks stretched into months, the estate proceeded with legal formalities. Vanessa Kellerman was officially contacted by Hogan's legal representatives and informed of her beneficiary status. No statement was released. No public appearance made. Just a quiet signature on a court document accepting the inheritance that Brooke had left behind. Whether this marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Hogan legacy, or the start of its slow redefinition, remained unclear. But one thing was certain, the story wasn't over. Not for Brooke. Not for WWE. And not for the millions of fans who had grown up on the legend of the immortal Hulk Hogan. In the months that followed the courtroom drama and the avalanche of press, Brooke Hogan's life took on a strange new rhythm, quiet, reflective, almost monastic. Nashville had always been a sanctuary for her, a city where she could disappear into songwriting sessions, long drives through the hills, and the kind of solitude that doesn't feel lonely. But this time, the quiet wasn't comforting. It was haunting. Even with $30 million left on the table, the weight of her father's legacy continued to loom like a shadow that refused to retreat. She stopped attending red carpet events. Declined every podcast invitation. Turned down all offers for exclusive interviews. There were even rumors that